Welcome back to Gangs All Here, our New York Jets podcast from the New York Post. I am Jake Brown alongside my co-host, Jets beat writer for the Post. You can read his Jets coverage at nypost.com or pick up a newspaper. They are still available. I have a few bodegas near me that sometimes do sell the New York Post, and I like to look inside and see some of the coverage by Brian Costello. You can follow him on Twitter at Brian Cos and follow me at Jake Brown Radio. My buddy Jake Asman will join me later in the program. Cause the carousel continues. Feels like I'm back at the Palisades Mall riding one of those horse pony carousels. I don't know if you've been to Palisades Mall ever in your life, but it's around West.
The big one? The Palisades. Yeah, I've been there.
It's a big mall. You go shopping there and you ride on a carousel. Well, the Jets are riding the quarterback carousel, and it's deja vu all over again as Zach Wilson will start on Sunday against the Texans. Somebody tweeted me, well, you guys talking about a daily podcast. You should do one because there's new news every day. Monday, it was Zach reluctant to start again. Then it was, Brett Ripp being signed to the practice squad and Tim Boyle cut. Then it was Zach Wilson being named the starter. And Thursday, it's the Gangs All Here podcast. So we got a lot to catch up on. God, let's start with that report Monday that came out by I love Diana Rossini. I've known her a while. I think she's a good reporter. People may think differently. I think she's good. She put out a report, I believe, with Zach Rosenblatt of the Athletic, that Zach would be reluctant to start again if he was put back in there. What have you heard regarding that report?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of respect for both of them as reporters, Jake. So just to start there, I think there's truth to the report. I think sometimes what happens is the interpretation of a report can be a little different than what's reported. I think the interpretation Monday was like that Saleh went to Zach and said, hey, you're starting. And Zach gave him the middle finger. I feel like that was kind of where people were at Monday. I don't think that's the way it went down. I do think Zach probably may have told some people, maybe teammates, that, is it worth it for me to go out there and possibly get hurt? Which is a conversation that a lot of players have at this time of year, Jake. When the playoffs are out of reach and it's December, you'll see a lot of guys go on IR all of a sudden that have been kind of, maybe fighting through injury or something, or all of a sudden there's a lot of injuries in December. If you look at, like, if you want to go back and look at the Jets week 18, week 17 starting lineups through the years, there's some names on there you're going to be like, who the heck is this guy? Because so many people make business decisions to shut it down in December. So that being said, I think he definitely said something. I just think it got a little out of control Monday, and I don't think that's on the reporters necessarily. I think it just kind of, the way the story got interpreted was that Zach told Saleh he didn't want to start, which I don't think that ever happened. I think once they said you're starting, I think Zach said okay. And I don't know, maybe Zach was half joking. Sometimes that happens where they say something, but I wouldn't say the report was inaccurate. I think it just got kind of interpreted a little differently, if that makes sense.
Who do you think you thought it was a player? You think it's a player that told him, or a coach, or any guesses?
No, and that's not a game anyone should play because you'll never know. You like the way sources work, Jake, is there's people that tell you stuff that you'd have no idea that they'd be a source. Like, I don't think maybe a player told them directly. I don't know. But a lot of times what happens is a player tells someone like their agent, or a player tells someone like their brother, or a player tells someone like a friend or a marketing guy. And that person then tells a reporter. And then as a reporter, you go try to find other people to confirm it. And work. And I think they did that. I think their report said they had multiple team sources say this, but yeah, I know there was a fun game of like Tim Boyle must have been the leak because they cut him. Tim Boyle still had a locker yesterday when we were in the locker room, so my guess is Tim Boyle might be back on the practice squad at some point. So I think all your detectives out there need to slow down. It's never quite as simple as it appears when you start guessing sources.
No, it is interesting because there's things I hear about the Mets that I can't even say that I know that are from, they're not from a player. They're from a player's wife's friend, or like someone that you would never expect it. And it's someone you trust enough because they're literally talking to that person. They text that person every day. So you never know where it is coming from. And you couldn't imagine Zach would go to the quarterback and say, nah. And there were a lot of people tweeting like, I can't blame him. He shouldn't go back out there. This is a kid that got a 4-year, $35 million contract. You're in the NFL. And in my mind, Kaz, I would think he needs to go back out there for any other team to maybe want him. Like he's getting another chance to prove himself. What he has on tape right now, I don't know about you. I don't think that's backup quarterback. That's third string quarterback material in the NFL, what he's put on tape so far.
Yeah, I think you have a point. I think he's got a 5-game tryout here, basically, for next year. I also think he has a contract. He has to play. If they tell him you're playing, you have to play. There's no real choice here in the matter. And if he did do that, I think the Jets would cut him in a heartbeat. Like if he said it to Saleh, like, I'm not playing, like he really stood fast on this, they'd cut him in a heartbeat and his career would be over, because teams would see that and be like, what the hell is that? Like, I was trying to think, can I ever remember a player refusing to play? And the closest thing was Tebow at the end, Jake. I don't know if you remember this. In the second to last game, he refused to play Wildcat. He didn't want to do it anymore. And he refused to play with Rex. So they basically stopped playing him, and they didn't cut him because the season was over. There was like a week left. And I just think they didn't want to make a bigger deal of the Tebow thing than it already was. But that's the closest thing I can remember. And Tebow, I think he said I'd play quarterback. He was mad. They had gotten to McElroy at that point over him. And so he just said, like, F you, I'm not going to do the Wildcat thing anymore. But that, I can't remember anyone else ever really refusing to play. And so I think that would be a career ender for you if you did that. And I think Zach's a smart guy. I think he has some smart people around him. So I don't think that ever would have happened.
There are plenty of quarterbacks we've watched that we wish refused to play over the last 12 years. And the list goes on and on. But yeah, that would be absolutely ludicrous if that were to happen. But I think this is a very important stretch for him, because here's what I worry about. And like someone tweeted, I think it was Joe Caperso, or I don't know how to pronounce his last name, tweeted, he could see Zach playing decent enough that the Jets bring him back for his final year of his contract as Aaron. Like, can you make sure, clear my sanity, make sure he's gone, right?
Yeah, he's gone. He's gone after this year. Okay. The financial hit's a lot easier this year, Jake. Remember, I've told you 100 times now that
I think it's 11 million.
If they cut him before this year, it was 20.7 million, which that is a tough number. If it's 11 million, they can eat that. That's not that bad. They're finished with Zach. It's not happening. He's not going to be back. They know they have to get a good veteran quarterback to back up Aaron next year, and I wouldn't be surprised if they also draft one, not in the first round, but later, to be a kind of developmental quarterback too.
Yeah, I saw that tweet. I'm like, I know there's no truth to it, but I really hope it does not become true. There's another layer that I completely forgot that happened in this week of Jetsland, and it's friend of the program, Joe Benigno.
I mean, bro.
First off, I don't think Saleh should be texting Joe B about his six-part plan. What was your reaction to that?
My initial reaction is like, I'd like to read the 6-part plan. I maybe suggest that to our editors, Jake, that the Post should publish the 6-part plan, because I think it'd be awesome. I think Joe probably has some really wacky ideas, knowing Joe, of how to fix the Jets. Yeah, not a good idea for Saleh to be texting with Joe Benigno. Anything of like substance about the team, I guess, is the way to put it. Like, if he wants to have a relationship with Joe, sure, but like, you got to be very careful. If you're going to do that. And Joe, I think, admittedly made a mistake saying what he said on the air on Monday with Tiki and Evan. Mm-hmm. He cleaned it up on Tuesday. I think he went on with Boomer. He went on with Tiki and Evan again and sort of walked it back. And I do believe the reasoning that he gave, that Saleh said, "Are you serious?" because of him suggesting Zach should play after he's been against Zach for the whole entire season. I do think that's probably what Saleh meant. Because the Michael K show a few weeks ago, Jake, I think after the Buffalo game, when initially came down, or maybe it was after the Black Friday game, one of the guys on the Michael K show asked Robert, like, could you go back to Zach? And he started laughing, and he's like, you guys are unbelievable. He's like, all you've been doing is yelling at me to bench Zach, and now you're saying go back to him. So I do think that's probably what Saleh meant. But yeah, I never thought I'd be asking about Benigno in a press conference, Jake, but here we are in December of 2023. It's always fun.
Were you the one that asked that question?
I asked the follow up. I asked if he had any regrets about the Benigno situation.
That relationship has to be fractured. Like, he might respond to a text here and there, but I can't imagine he's going to be responding very often to Joe Benigno at this point. That was
Yeah,
ugly.
I think that'll probably be cooling off. But Sal's a really nice guy, and I think he was trying to be too nice there.
Yeah, I mean, Joe's got to understand what the text meant. He read it, and it's obviously the wrong interpretation on a drive time radio show on the number one station. Like, it's not a great look for Joe. So, maybe he's figuring whatever. I'll ruin the relationship because he'll be fired in a month anyway. Maybe he's thinking, hey, he won't be our head coach.
I don't think Joe was that calculated. I think Joe just kind of got caught up in the moment, and so decided to say what he said.
Well, Tim Boyle is gone, although he might be back in the practice squad. It's Zach. It is Trevor Siemian. It is interesting they didn't give Siemian a start here. Were you a little surprised? Maybe give Siemian one and then go to Zach? I know he got a quarter and fumbled a few times, but were they just thinking, you know what, he's no better?
Yeah, I wasn't surprised. I thought there was like a 5% chance that it might be Siemian, but yeah,
well, because Saleh did have the quote that opened some ears that Zach gives us the best chance to win, and everyone's thinking, why didn't you just stick with Zach then? Why'd you go back to Boyle?
Yeah, so let's talk about that, Jay, because I know some people went crazy, and it's not a great quote on the surface, but I think if you actually look at it, right, like what have we been screaming about after the Chargers game or after the Raiders game? It's like this offense needs a spark. They can't score, so change quarterbacks just to try to give a spark. I think Saleh did that. I do think he always believed Zach Wilson was better than Tim Boyle and Trevor Siemian, but he also couldn't argue with, like, you guys can't get in the end zone, so let's try something. Like we've said this, Jake, like the argument is almost like, can it be worse? Right? It wasn't. I don't think anyone was arguing like, oh, Tim Boyle is going to be so much better than Zach Wilson. It was just like, can it get any worse than it's been? So he just tried something. It clearly didn't work, and so now he's going back to Zach. With Siemian, I've just got the impression he hasn't been very impressive in practice, and then in his little bit of action last week against the Falcons, not great. So and I think Zach has a different skill set than those guys in terms of he can escape, and with his offensive line, we've seen it when Zach's been at his best this season. He's taken off and run with the ball. Like that's really been where he's been at his best. Like against the Chiefs, he did it. What was it? Was the Eagles? I think he did it. There was one other game where he was pretty good with his legs, and that's an element that they need right now because the offensive line's so banged up.
And he said, kind of, guys, he's playing with chip on his shoulder. He's mad. He's going to play a little pissed off, I guess, and he's going to try to have fun. Do you see any difference in him maybe having some more fun in the final 5 games of a 4-8 Jets season? Are you expecting a better Zach Wilson? Because I think we're just going to see the same old Zach Wilson
here. At some point, Jake, I think Zach has to get to a point where he says, F it. And like, it's over. Like, I'm not going to be the Jets quarterback. And I just have to just go out there and just chuck it around the yard. And I'm not sure if he's there. Right. But I just think, the funny thing is that was Zach's game in college, was just street ball, right? Like run around, make things happen. And we saw it early on in the rookie year. And what was the quote from Saleh? He's got to play boring football. Like they almost broke him. Like he was like a wild stallion and they wanted to make him, a racehorse, and they put a saddle on him. And I think they broke him. And so can he get back to what we saw at BYU and even early on in his career here, just kind of run around and try to make something happen? And look, Jake, that could result in 5 interceptions, right? It could, because that's not the way you're supposed to play football in the NFL. But it also could end up in a day where he throws, dare I say, like 2 touchdowns. I'm not going to go crazy, Jake. But like, can he do something where like the offense moves? Like, yeah, it could go either way. And I think you look at it, I think Zach needs to be more like a Josh Allen than, give me like a pocket quarterback, Jake, that's just kind of, or like a Brock Purdy, right? Like that's Brock's in the pocket all around. Like Josh Allen throws a ton of interceptions. He also throws a lot of touchdowns, and like he just kind of runs around and plays loose. So can Zach get there? Maybe. I don't know. I just don't know. I mean, that to me would be him having fun. And I think at some point they just have to be like, the whole team, the whole offense just has to be like, screw it. Let's just go out there and throw it around a little bit.
I like that reference. He was a wild stallion, and they try to turn him into a horse,
Racehorse.
racehorse.
Like
I would
they
say
put a
My
saddle
Little
on him.
Pony. They basically made him My Little Pony. They've turned him into a little
Well,
pony.
they wanted him to be. He might have turned into My Little Pony. They wanted him to be, a good thoroughbred racehorse. That like they wanted him to run their system and not take a lot of chances. But it's just, I think it's blown up in their face that they did that. And I'm not excusing Zach. He plays a big role in his failure, but I do think there's something to the Jets. Like they drafted a guy because of what you saw at BYU, and then they tried to change him. It's like, I'm sure women in your life, Jake, have been attracted to your wild ways, and then they try to tame you and say, "Hey, you can't go to 5 Mets games this week," and you're like, "Hey, this is who I am."
That's what I'm
Right?
saying. That sums up why I'm saying. Or they got a cat and they try to make me like their cat. I'm like, I don't like the cat. I'm not a cat guy.
Anti-cat.
Hate cats, and I'm pretty sure I'm allergic. Like whenever I'm around them, I haven't got tested to be if I'm allergic, but I'm 90% sure I am. So the allergic thing, then they jump on you, they scratch. You never know when they're gonna jump and attack. I know you're a cat guy. It's what they've walked in behind us, but
Yeah,
I just
only have
can't
one.
do it.
I only have one. I have a pretty great cat. So
See, that's the problem. Everyone with a cat says their cat is adorable.
I've had some other cats that were not great. Jake, this cat's great. This cat's almost like a dog. Acts like a dog a lot.
What makes this cat better than like it just doesn't jump and scratch you?
Never scratches. Scratches. Always just kind of wants to just hang with you, and like she'll roll. Like she rolls over like and wants you to scratch her belly, like, which is not a cat thing. Usually that's like a dog thing,
It's like a human thing. I like a little belly scratch.
Just too much information. But just good cat. I've had other cats that were pricks and scratchy and stuff like that, and so I've seen the other side.
So some of your cats have been like Jamal Adams, you would say, as a case. But
we're not talking about him again, are we?
Yeah, no. We're talking cats and ponies. December of Jets football. Feel the excitement. It's in the air. Oh,
how about man. Jamal doubled down? Did you see that story?
He said something else I didn't see.
The Seahawks reporters caught up with him on Wednesday. And it was funny because Pete Carroll said his press conference, like, we had a great conversation. He knows he screwed up. Like, that's not what we want here. And then they got to Jamal, and Jamal's like, I have no regrets. and Jamal said, if someone goes low, I go lower. That was
when they go low, I go lower. Oh my God. That's can't even get it right with one of the best coaches in the league, and Pete Carroll. He's still finding a way to mess up. I thought they were going to ask him his thoughts on Toy Story. He's a big fan of Mr. Potato Head, or maybe not a fan of Mr. Potato Head. Maybe he's not a Toy Story fan. Well, the Jets do play a game this week. The week leading up to the game is the best part. Like this whole week, all the stories you have more to write about from Monday to Thursday than on Sunday.
What's funny, Jake, is so like traditionally, like Wednesday is where you like flip the page to like the next week, right? Like, so like the way the week works, like Monday, you spend the day breaking down the game before. And so like the press conferences are all about what happened in that game. Tuesday, you might do like some analysis. And then like Wednesday, it's usually like, all right, let's turn the page and start writing about whoever they're playing this week and the matchups and that kind of thing. The last 2 weeks, there have been 0 questions about the opponent on Wednesday, because last week it was all about Aaron practicing for the first time, and this week it was all about Zach and Benigno and all this other stuff. So like, there's been no questions about the Houston Texans yet. We'll get there Friday, I think.
Yeah, when they say there's no distractions, there's distractions. Like everything is a distraction right now with this team. But the Texans fighting for a playoff spot, guys, in a division now where Trevor Lawrence has a high ankle sprain and opens it wide open. Yeah. You figure high ankle sprain, Trevor Lawrence misses at least 2 games, maybe 3, I would imagine. So opens it up for CJ Stroud here, who lost Tank Dell for the season. This is a team that slings it. You want to talk about maybe Zach becoming a wild stallion? Well, Stroud is a tamed wild stallion because he throws it down the field, but effectively he's got Dalton Schultz. It looks like coming back this week. His tight end, great in the red zone. He's got Nico Collins, Robert Woods. He's got 2 backs in Pierce and Singletary. Their defense, they're 19th in total defense. They're 9th in rush defense. The Jets have failed to run the ball successfully. We'll see if there's some Izzy this week. Will we get Izzy? You said he was sick last week. Will he get a go this week? You got 5 games. Let's see what you got in him. these last 5 weeks. All right. D'Amico Ryans versus Robert Saleh, coached under him, credited Saleh to, learning from him, learning from under him in San Francisco. D'Amico has done a tremendous job in his first season as head coach. Baldy, good looking dude. So this is a big game for the Texans. Another team fighting for first place coming into MetLife Stadium. And would you believe it, Kaz? Another rainy game. I went through the schedule and was going through how many games at MetLife. I have Bills, Pats, the Giants game, and Falcons. I don't remember if it rained for the Chiefs game. Did it rain a little bit for the Chiefs game, or
I don't think so.
Eagles game?
I don't remember Taylor Swift having any rain gear for that game.
Well, she's in a suite, so she never needs rain gear. Eagles game, was it rain? I don't
remember it raining.
All right, so this is the 5th game at MetLife Stadium for the Jets this year with rainy conditions. It will be in the 60s, which this weather is, everyone's getting sick. It's 30 today and snowing, and 60 and rainy on Sunday. Mother Nature, tell me how that's possible.
What do you think the crowd will be like Sunday, Jake?
4,000 people. No, it's. I'm thinking like, oh yeah, there'll be a lot of Texans fans, but are there any Texans fans? I figure it's going to be 20% Texans. There's going to be Stroud fans. Maybe people saw him in college. Maybe people coming from Houston for a weekend in New York. It's holiday season. Tourists have taken over. I've been avoiding Midtown because it's way too many tourists right now. So there'll be a lot of people seeing Stroud, people from Houston. 80,000 fans. I'd say it's probably going to be 55, 60,000, and maybe that's generous, but there'll be a lot of open seats.
Will you be there? Will you be going to the game?
Hell no. Unless someone.
Are you done? Are you done until 2024?
If someone says, "Hey, come to the suite," I will consider. There might be that offer on the table.
Bougie. You're so bougie.
Well, listen, it's raining. Yes, I am. I go for the food. If you're going to games now, I hope you're going for the food and the tailgate. Because at this point, why go see? I like watching the couch. I like Red Zone and Jets like side by side.
I don't know, Jake, if I said this on the post-game podcast on Sunday, but very impressed with the people that were out there on Sunday for that Falcons game, because that's a bad, just a nothing opponent, right? I'm not saying the Falcons are a bad team, but there's nothing sexy about the Falcons. Like this week, at least you have CJ Stroud. Nothing sexy about the Falcons.
Last week they were still miserable in it. They were out, but
now you're out. Quarterback. Yeah, Tim Boyle started. You're still in it. You still have 0.001% chance or whatever. God. It was miserable, cold, rainy, and these people are out there tailgating. Very impressive, Jake, that those people are doing that.
I think this week's more impressive, just because, I know they were more in it last. Now you need a bunch of teams to lose.
Christmas Eve, those are the lunatics. If you're out there Christmas Eve for the Commanders game, because that's another opponent where
they should even give you off Christmas Eve. You shouldn't even be there Christmas. Go enjoy time with your family. We shouldn't even be doing a podcast Christmas Eve. I might do a 2-minute.
Are we doing a podcast Christmas Eve?
I'll probably do a 2-minute little nugget. Be like, Jets loss. Have a great Christmas.
I'll probably be able to do it because my family won't be home, Jake. So
your family's bolting from you on Christmas Eve?
Oh, they go to my in-laws for Christmas Eve, so they'll be there so I'll probably be home alone on Christmas Eve.
Oh, it's a 1:00 game, right?
Yeah, but if we were recording at 8:30 or 9:00, they won't be home yet. They'll still be.
I was gonna say you could go there after the game.
Very far travel from MetLife Stadium.
Okay. All right, well, preview this game however you want to preview it and make.
And please, I hope my wife's not listening to this podcast. Jake just threw me under the bus there. It's oh yeah, you could go. You can.
You're I could do the podcast. Someone is not a fan of the in-laws. I hope your wife's not listening. Does anyone like their in-laws? I don't know.
No, I like my in-laws, Jake. I do not want to drive to their way out in Bumble, Jersey. So I'm not driving.
It's Jersey. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Is that South Jersey? Because
West,
Central.
West Jersey. No,
I didn't even know there was a West Jersey. That's a thing. What town is in West Jersey? I've never heard anyone reference West Jersey in my life. Wow. It really is far.
They're right near the Pennsylvania border. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you definitely.
You're aware that there's a state called Pennsylvania west of Jersey, right?
Yes. I'm not good with directions, MapQuest and all that. So, all right, break the game down. Make your pick.
Under normal circumstances, Jake, I think this is a good matchup for the Jets because the Texans have a good offense. The Jets have a good defense. I think they'll be able to limit Stroud. You go back to the Dolphins game a few weeks ago, another good offense should have been 10-6 at halftime, right? And and that 6 was from the defense scoring a touchdown. Then the Hail Mary happened. So I think they'll be able to hold Stroud down a little bit. I just, again, I stupidly picked them last week, and you laughed at me, and you were right. Like I don't want to hear any crap anymore about me picking against the Jets, okay? Because I picked them against the Falcons and ate it, and I think I picked them against the Raiders and ate it. So I just have no faith in this offense, obviously, Jake. So I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go Texans 20, Jets 13.
All right. Competitive game. Jets score.
Competitive game. Yeah,
Is it an offensive or a defensive touchdown? Is the question.
I'll go defense. I'll go offensive touchdown and 2 field goals. All right, that's
All right.
how we get there.
That's
But I think the defense will keep them in the game. And then the Texans will pull away in the second half, which is the story of most Jets games.
Yeah, I agree. It's same old story. Offense can't score enough. Hackett hasn't been good. We'll see if they do. I love to see another. We saw a flea flicker last week. Finally, I love a good flea flicker and work to perfection. So let's see if the Wild Stallion. That's what we're gonna call him now. The Wild Stallion Zach appears. Because listen, if he continues to play terribly, I don't know how a team signs him outside of being a practice squad quarterback. He is not a backup quarterback. You're taking a big risk making him your second string quarterback if someone gets hurt.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's going to guarantee him a second string job. I think he'll go to training camp somewhere and compete next year, and maybe he wins the job. I mean, look, the guy has skills and he can be impressive in practice sometimes. So maybe he wins the job somewhere next year as number 2. But yeah, I don't think anyone's like giving him, dare I say, Mike White money to be like the number 2. That's
well, people act like, oh, he'll go to a smaller market and he'll be better. He'll be a back. I don't think going to a smaller market is going to change his football ways. Maybe he'll take pressure off.
He needs to go somewhere with a great coaching staff.
Yep.
A great offensive coaching staff. Like
people have mentioned the Chiefs as an intriguing option.
That's if he ends up with Andy Reid, that could help. So, yeah, I mean, he needs to go somewhere like that. That's going to give him a great offensive coaching staff that can kind of fix his issues. And I do think, Jake, he could benefit. Like, this was the Jets' plan of sitting back and watching for a while, for a year, and maybe he gets rejuvenated that way.
Well, we'll see what happens. I'm going to take the Texans, of course, in this one. I was thinking similar to 20 points for the Texans. I'll say 20. I'll say 23. I say 2 touchdowns, 3 field goals. And the Jets, you know what? I'll say they score 16. I'll say 3 field goals and a touchdown. I think we see the scout maybe throws a few Hail Marys.
Jake, did you check the line?
It's 5.5.
Well, it's down. Now I'm checking live right now on my ESPN app, and Houston is now 3.5 point favorites. This line started at like 6.5. They started at like 6.5. So the Jets are taking money. The Jets are taking money in Vegas, Jake.
Are they going to make me put my mortgage on the Texans right now? Are they going to make me bet my life on the Texans?
The Sharps are taking the Jets. You might, I don't know. The Vegas knows something.
Wow. What? Yeah, that now I'm scared. Like now the Jets are going
to. It was the Zach Wilson made him starting quarterback affect the line.
I would think that would bring the line even worse. But 3.5. That is mind blowing.
Yeah, and it was. I'm pretty sure it opened at 6.5, and I saw yesterday was 5.5. So that's a lot. That's a big move for that line, right? Am I right? The opening line was 6.5.
I just don't know why. There's nobody else hurt outside Tank Dell. They're getting their tight end back. I'm worried. This is very, very odd. I'm still going to take 23-16 Texans. So, yeah, I mean,
how did the Jets get to 16? How do you have it?
A touchdown and 3 field goals. I think that's fair. They have had a lot of games. They've had several field goals. But that's bizarre. Like, if you're a gambler and it's at 3.5, my recommendation is buy that point minus 2.5 and hammer the Texans. I shouldn't condone betting against the Jets on the show, but if you watch that team, it's been a pretty good bet this season.
I feel like Vegas is telling you to take the Jets. Why is the line moving? I mean,
something fishy's going on. Yeah, I don't know. Well, some idiots betting the Jets, you're going to lose some money, and if you win, great. We'll have a victory podcast and falling slots down the draft. I still want them to win. I don't want at this point. They're not drafting a quarterback in the first round. That'd be a shocker. So you just want them to win. They're going to draft probably an offensive lineman. They need help there. we'll talk more draft in a few weeks on this show. So there's our picks, and there we go. We'll talk Monday, and Jake Asman joins Gangs All Here next. Gangs All Here, New York Post, Jake Brown and Jake Asman, friend of the program at Jake Asman on Twitter, Jake Asman Show on YouTube. He hosts on ESPN Radio New York, and he is also hosting nationally on ESPN Radio. He does it all, and Knicks Fan TV, which I've been a part of on a few programs as well. And Christmas week, he'll be filling in for Dave Rothenberg and Rick DiPietro on ESPN Radio New York for the whole week. So tune in. The holiday season filled with Jets cheer. If you're watching on the New York Post Sports YouTube, he's filled with Yankees cheer because Juan Soto is a New York Yankee. Would have loved him on the Mets. I think he's going to hit like 50 with the Yankees. Like that right field porch for Juan Soto, it's going to be Christmas. Now the question is, will he get hurt like every other Yankee that comes here? That's going to be the thing, Jake. Will he stay healthy? But I got to imagine, you were brought down with the return of Zach Wilson, but 24 hours later or 12 hours later, whatever it was, you were brought back up with Juan Soto.
Jake, you nailed it. I was at my lowest of lows, knowing the Jets had to go back to Zach Wilson and hearing Robert Saleh say the words, "He gives us the best chance to win," which he's not wrong, but it just shows you how pathetic the state of the Jets quarterback room is. That Zach Wilson, who's been benched now 4 times in his career, is giving the Jets the best chance to win. That all being said, Jake, Juan Soto, hopefully he lasts longer than 4 at-bats. Rodgers played 4 plays for the Jets. Hopefully Soto lasts longer than 4 at-bats. What gives me confidence? He played in all 162 last year. So this is a guy that's been incredibly durable in his career. So I think if you're, the Yankee Jet fan, you got to be giddy that the Yankees acted like the Yankees and made the Soto move last night. There's no doubt.
Yeah, if you know me, I'm the Met Jet fan, and I'm hanging along with the signings of Austin Adams and Kyle Crick, every minor league contract known to man, waiting for Yamamoto to become a Met. And
you got Severino though, baby, $13 million.
Listen, I think he's due for a good year. Like after last year, he's due, and if he's your 5th starter, I'm fine with Luis Severino. And that's the price for a 4th and 5th starter in today's day and age is $12-13 million. So it's 1 year, whatever. We'll see. Well, you can hear about that on the Amazing But True Mets podcast I do with Nelson Figueroa. We released a live show from the QBC the other day, so check that out. Well, Jake, I've gotten the tweets a little bit. You get them a lot more to this from the Zach Wilson truthers, whoever it may be. I mean, how many tweets now you're getting of, look, see what happened? You went to Boyle, you went to Simeon, and you lost. My comeback would be, well, they're still going to lose with Zach coming back. So a loss is a loss, and the offense was worse, but it was similar. They still didn't score touchdowns, just like they did with Zach. So what do you think of the carousel coming back to Zach, which Kaz early on the show, Jay, called at BYU a wild stallion who the Jets have tried to turn into a racehorse, or I call a little pony. A great reference, I thought, by Kaz there. But what do you think of the return and the tweets that you're getting here?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's hilarious to me that, the quote unquote big win for the Zach Wilson truthers, the Zach Wilson defenders is, oh, you said, it couldn't get worse, this offense. And look what happened. See, Zach's not the problem. And then I sit there and go, you saying that Zach Wilson's better than Tim Boyle, who doesn't belong on any NFL team, and clearly an over the hill washed Trevor Siemian, is not the win that you guys think it is. Like, Zach Wilson should be better than those guys. The reality is, over Zach Wilson's final 4 games, the Jets scored 2 offensive touchdowns. Like, they had to try something else. They've done everything else up until that point besides replace the quarterback. They benched Alan Lazard. They benched CJ Uzama. They cut Michael Carter. They're playing the young guys. They tried every O-line combination imaginable because of all the injuries. If you're not going to change the play caller, and we know why, because of Aaron Rodgers' connection with Nathaniel Hackett, then the only thing left to try at that point was benching Zach Wilson. So it didn't work, but I don't blame Robert Saleh for trying to do something. You owe it to the defense. You owe it to the guys on special teams to try and make a move. It didn't work, but the idea that, well, going back to Zach proves that Zach's not the problem. No, he's just, unfortunately, the best of 3 horrible options that Joe Douglas put together for Robert Saleh to choose from. And there's like this thing nowadays, I saw Jimmy Traina of Sports Illustrated have a similar thought that, like, a player can't just be bad. Like, you always got to blame everything else before you now say a certain player is bad. And that's just ridiculous to me. For 3 years, Zach Wilson's been the one constant with the Jets, and no matter how you slice it, the eye test, his numbers. He's been one of the worst quarterbacks in football for 3 years. And this year alone, he's got 6 total touchdowns versus 12 total turnovers. So, yes, there's issues with the play caller. Yes, there's issues with the offensive line injuries. Yes, outside of Garrett Wilson, the receiver room leaves a lot to be desired. But the one constant for 3 years has been Zach Wilson's not any good. And unfortunately, I feel like going back to him is just rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic right now. Like the Jets just need to get through these final 5 games. Robert Saleh's got to keep this team together. And if he could do that, I still think he's coming back next year, as is Joe Douglas, and they're going to get that year with Aaron Rodgers, and they better go all in the offseason to surround the offensive side of the ball with way more talent than they currently have.
My fear is Zach, lights it up. He has a couple of great throws and they bring him back. Like he's got a year left. That's got to be like you. Like both of us, our greatest fear of him playing well is that they're going to be fooled into bringing him back as the backup. Kaz says no way. He says he's gone. He's getting released. They'll eat the 11 million, the cap hit. But that's my one thing is that I want them to win. Like if they lose, that's great for draft. But I think we're too deep into this. It's like, all right, I hope they lose the rest of the season. If they do, great. But how do you feel about that? Are you in let's just lose? Or I think you need to build a winning culture because of the guys you have on this team who are going to be here next year. And if you have the mindset here, you lose out. One, I think I've said if they lose out, I think you have to fire Saleh. I mean, if you're 4-13, you can't bring him back. But two, you don't want Garrett Wilson to be on 4-13 team. Last year losing 6 in a row. This would be a loss of 10 in a row. Like you don't want these young players having this mindset of we suck, we lose, because that's not just going to translate to W's next year. You got to build that culture, and I think that starts in these last 5.
Jake, I completely agree with you. I mean, look, the one thing I'll say is if they lose, great. You're going to end up getting a better draft pick. But you know what? This is not 2020. This is not, losing so you could get a generational quarterback and losing it because Darnold and Adam Gase aren't going to be back. This team brings back most of their key pieces for next year. Like, look at their defense. If they do nothing in the offseason besides, let's say, re-sign Bryce Huff, all their good players are under contract for next year. So I don't want this team to just get used to losing. I want to see this team win some games. I don't know if Robert Saleh can survive, as you pointed out, losing 10 straight after they lost 6 straight to end last year, even with the Aaron Rodgers injury. So I really think they could use a win or two here down the stretch. And yes, obviously, if they win a game or two, you'd think Zach Wilson was okay in those games if they were going to win. But we've seen games where he's been terrible and they still have been able to win. So I think Zach kind of is what he is. I'm still rooting for wins. I'm still rooting for Zach because I'm a Jet fan. And I just look at it like no matter where they're picking, if Joe Douglas is good at his job, you'll be able to find a very good player no matter where you end up. So at the end of the day, this team needs to win some games. And I feel for the fans who are still going to these games. If we're still investing all this time watching, I don't want to root against them. There's too many good players on this team for them to finish 4-13. So if Saleh wants to be back, I think he needs at least one more win to break up a 10-game losing streak, because I don't know how you bring him back if you end the year on a 10-game losing streak, as you said.
And it's interesting because Kaz has, brought it up that they're married, that Douglas and Saleh are married, that if you fire Saleh, you probably fire Douglas. So that's going to be intriguing to watch here these last 5 games. Do they win 1 and that's enough? Do they, lose out and that's not enough? Like, the argument is, again, Rodgers going to say, I came for Saleh. I want him to stay. So what Rodgers says goes. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this final stretch played out. Let's address the Benigno in the room. What did you think of that whole controversy? I mean, this week, it's a soap opera in Jets. I mean, it's always a soap opera, but there's been something new every couple hours. A guy reads a text. Boyle gets cut, but Boyle might be in the practice squad. They signed Ripien. The Zach reluctance to play, which I believe, but I don't think he would say that to Saleh. Like, I think in the back of his mind, he's like, this team screwed me over. I don't want to get hurt again. But this is an audition for Zach these final 5 weeks. Like, he's not a backup. He's maybe a practice squad quarterback. And if he has a great 5 games, maybe the team's fooled into making him their full-time backup quarterback. But what do you think of the Benigno text gate going on?
Well, one, objectively hilarious that this is a story. Like, just added to the list on ridiculous things that only happen to the Jets and Jet fans having to go through it. That being said, I think it's a little overblown from this standpoint. Joe has been saying all year things that he has texted to Robert Saleh, and Saleh's responses. And the reason why it became such a big deal is obviously one, he did it on FAN, and FAN blasted it out there to everyone, and it went viral from there. But he told the same exact story on John Jastrzemski's podcast, our mutual friend Jake. Like he's done this all year. Like I went to the Jets-Giants game with Joe B, and he was telling me some things, and like I've actually seen the conversations, and like Saleh's never like revealing state secrets to Joe B. So like people are like, how could Saleh be texting with Joe? And like if you know Joe like you and I do, like it's quite conceivable that Saleh liked Joe. He's this nice guy. They formed this relationship after Saleh went on Joe's podcast. They played golf one time, and Saleh looks at it like, hey, here's this amazing diehard Jet fan. It's funny that he texts me. Like Saleh gets a kick out of it. Joe obviously shouldn't have done what he done. I'm not going to make excuses for that. Him going on FAN and saying, well, he's not going to like me saying this, but like Joe should know better. I think he got carried away. He apologized for it. So it is what it is. But I think everyone killing Saleh for how could you have this relationship with Joe? Like, if you kind of understand the dynamics of who Joe is and who Saleh is, like, I think it's a little overblown because Saleh's, once again, I promise you, not revealing state secrets about the New York Jets or which players he likes or doesn't like to a retired part-time radio host.
Well, it's more so on Joe. And how do you misinterpret that? Like all year you've been saying, Zach stinks, bench Zach. Obviously, he's not going to agree with you that Zach stinks in a text message that you can read on the air. So he should have, as soon as he read it, been like, yeah, this is what it meant. I mean, he's getting old, maybe the old
He still
age
has a flip phone, Jake. And also, here's
true.
how I know, like, right away that Joe misinterpreted it. So Robert Saleh is a weekly hit on the station I work for, 98.7 ESPN New York. He goes on the Michael Kay show every Monday. And similar kind of line of questioning when he was on the show. Hey, coach, you tried a different quarterback. Don't you kind of have to go back to Zach after seeing what the offense looked like? And Saleh laughed at the question and goes, I love you guys. Kind of like the same thing he texted Benigno. Like, all year you guys are telling me I got to bench Zach Wilson because he stinks. He's not any good. How could you keep playing him, coach? And then you see what happens when we don't play him. And now you guys want me to go back to Zach. Like, you guys in the media, your fans, you guys are unbelievable. So we had like the same kind of answer verbally to the Michael Kay show that he gave through text to Joe B. But obviously Joe B completely misinterpreted it, and it became a huge story.
Yeah, I mean, this is just one layer. I don't think it affects much, but in my opinion, I don't know if you can win a championship with Robert Saleh. He's done nothing as a head coach in these 3 years. And listen, I know he's had no quarterback and a bad team, but like he's done nothing that he said, wow, that was a great decision by the head coach. And that's what you worry about, running it back. Let's just run it back. Like, Rodgers can't do it all himself. Rodgers with Hackett can't do it all themselves. And they're gonna have to get the coaching right. So in my opinion, I think he should be let go, barring, you win 4 out of 5 here. If they lose out, definitely. If they lose 4 out of 5, still, I think he should be fired. He's really got to win a couple, I think, to save his job. But, if the Jets being the Jets, Jake, we know what's gonna happen. They're running it back. There will be no changes.
I think that might be the right move, though, Jake, just given like the context of, hey, if you're going to be all in with Rodgers next year, then be all in. And if it doesn't work, it's a lot easier than to get rid of both GM and coach together and kind of keep everyone on the same timeline. I think the last thing they should do is fire one and not the other and relive like the John Izek, Mike Tannenbaum, Rex Ryan triangle, after the 2012 season. So I'm with you. The one thing I'll say about Saleh, though, he's an expert on his side of the ball. Todd Bowles was not. Adam Gase obviously was not. You look at Brandon Staley and the Chargers, like he's a defensive guy. Their defense is terrible. That's a guy who's wasting the talent of Justin Herbert and the rest of the pieces on that offense. Like Saleh's had the worst quarterback room in the league for 3 straight years. The defense is still an elite defense that plays hard for him game in, game out. The special teams is still great. Like, yes, I think there's certainly some things we can question with Saleh, but I would just point out, like, what's Belichick been without Brady? Zach Taylor before Monday night was 4-28-1 without Joe Burrow. So I don't want to like completely exonerate Saleh because there's definitely some red flags and some concerns that I have, but I will say I don't know if it's fair to like truly say, oh, well, he hasn't done anything as a coach when, you know what, he hasn't had a quarterback. And in today's NFL, there's a reason why the quarterbacks make $55 million plus a year.
No, you're 100% correct. I just wish he had an offensive mastermind along his side. Nathaniel Hackett does not reek offensive mastermind. It really shows you that. And listen, everyone says LaFleur was the play call in Green Bay. It showed you that it was Rodgers off. Like Rodgers audibled so much and probably had such a say in the playbook and calling the plays. So that's what I'm going to hopefully next year be fascinated to see is that dynamic and how many times the audibles and how many plays are actually called. by Aaron and not Hackett. But that's hurt too. Last year with his own LaFleur, with the Jets with Saleh, he wasn't an offensive mastermind either. So it's not like he has had a great offensive coaching staff as well, which I think has hurt this team. What do you think happened Sunday? Kaz said 2013. I said 23-16. I cannot believe it, Jake. We at the end of the segment, we realized the line is down to 3.5, and we're trying to wonder why. Like Dalton Schultz is coming back. I know Tank Dell's out, but maybe because of the rainy conditions, they're expecting an ugly game. But we're trying to figure out why is the line only 3.5. What do you think about the game Sunday?
Yeah, the line is quite honestly shocking. And, I know this Texans team very well. I did radio in Houston for 5 years, and, it's amazing, right? And by the way, as far as the Texans and how it kind of relates to Robert Saleh and the Jets conversation, the Texans going into the year, Jake, they had the worst record in the NFL since 2020. The only difference, I'm telling you, between DeMeco Ryans, who credits Robert Saleh for his development as a coach, and Robert Saleh is one franchise drafted Zach Wilson second overall, another franchise drafted CJ Stroud second overall. Now, that all being said, I think the reason why the line is moving is because the weather's supposed to be terrible on Sunday. We're talking 20-plus mile-per-hour winds, rain in the forecast. I think that probably has a lot to do with it. Plus, the Texans are a little banged up. CJ Stroud without Tank Dell, maybe there's an adjustment period. We know the Jets defense is going to play well. Typically, they show up and will keep the Jets in the game for at least a half. But, man, based on what we've seen from this offense and Zach Wilson, I don't know how you don't take the Texans. So I think the Texans win. I'll say they'll win, 23-13, something like that. Like, I do think the Texans are going to win the game. They'll cover the number, and the Jets offense is going to be more of the same. Struggle to put up points with whoever the quarterback is.
Yeah, I think the weather's got to be, because it just goes 5.5, 6.5 down to 3.5. Maybe they're just expecting it to just be so ugly. But if I'm a gambler, I said I buy the point, make it Texas minus 2.5, and hammer that, because I don't see. Zach Wilson could play fun. He could play mad. He still sucks. So no matter how much fun he's having out there.
Don't say that. The truthers are going to come after you, Jake. You're not allowed to say a bad quarterback's actually bad. You have to blame everyone else but the guy who's actually, making the plays with the ball in his hand every play.
Yeah, people getting soft. Like, people were coming after you after that Twitter, Cairo. We're both in a position to talk about a team and say what we believe. And if you disagree, fine. But I don't think saying what you believe and pointing out facts and being mad at a quarterback and being a fan and putting your content out there means, as someone said, that you're better than people or your opinion more. It's what you do. It's your full-time job. What you get paid to do is to do what you're doing. So if you're going to disagree with it, I don't understand calling people out and thinking you're better than them. It's just, it's part of the job. But we got to take the heat. Just like Zach Wilson has to take the heat.
That's right.
So Jake Asman, you can catch him on the Jake Asman Show on YouTube, ESPN 98.7 FM in New York, and ESPN Radio nationally. Jake, glad to see you on the grind, always hustling. And next time you're in New York, I know you asked me about the Knicks game. I was going to a party that night. I was with your boy Mariano Rivera the other night. So just, the holiday season, hanging with some New York legends. Because they got none in New York right now. There's no one. There's no legends. Pete Alonso might get shipped out. The Jets got no one. Maybe I'll hang with Garrett Wilson next week. He's a legend in our books. But we appreciate you coming on. Happy holidays. Happy Hanukkah. Merry Christmas. And I'm sure we'll do a final check-in before this miserable Jets season comes to an end.
It is an honor to be on this podcast. And let me say this. Nobody does the New York City lifestyle quite like the great Jake Brown. I mean, my God, it's unbelievable what you do.
People wonder. Chris Sheeran once said, you fall ass backwards into certain events. And he's honestly right. Like, a lot of these things happen like a couple hours before they're happening. And I love it. It's the perks of being single and just worrying about yourself and living your best life. I love the New York City life, and I've certainly had some fun. Well, I got to keep myself sane watching the Mets, Jets, and, Knicks have been fine, but Knicks. And got to keep ourselves sane. Happy holidays,
That's right.
Jake.
Happy holidays, Jake. Thank you so much for having me.
Great stuff there from my buddy Jake Asman. As that says, adios to episode 169. Gangs all here, Jets podcast from the New York Post. Thanks to Andrew Hartz and the intern Mason Verdicchio for helping me produce the show. Watch us on that New York Post Sports YouTube. If you're not, go there right now. Subscribe, follow that Gangs All Here playlist. Give us a thumbs up below, comment below. your predictions for Jets-Texans on Sunday, and let us know all your thoughts about everything going on. What do you think about the team right now? What do you think about Zach coming back to start? Let us know. And if you're a listener, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Amazon, wherever you get podcasts. Give us that 5-star rating, if you will. Go on Apple Podcasts, give us 5 stars. And we do appreciate the positive reviews as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Jake Brown Radio. Follow Kaz at Brian Kaz. Well, happy holidays, everyone. I know Hanukkah is beginning. Happy Hanukkah to all our Jewish listeners and those who celebrate. For Brian Costello, I am Jake Brown. We'll be back first thing Monday morning after the Jets-Texans game with our post-game show. We'll see if Zach slings it. Let's see if we see wild Stallion Zach. I still love that reference. I need to get that on a t-shirt. But not with Zach's face on it. We'll be back Monday morning. We'll talk to you all then. Enjoy the game. And if you're going, you're crazy, but enjoy the game. We'll talk to you Monday. Thanks for listening to Gangs All Here.